Hello everyone. My name is Edward. I'm a global director of threat intelligence at SmartTech247, but most importantly, I'm a hacker. I've been doing offensive security for over a decade right now, and I'm managing a team of most talented and experienced penetration testers I've ever worked with. Today, I'll share with you some of our insight on the cyber attack surface. And this has been a hot topic recently. I'm seeing a lot of vendors talking about services and providing different tools for cyber attack surface management. And my observation is that this topic is well covered from a defense point of view, where people tell you how the tools and the services can help you to protect your attack surface. But I don't see a lot of discussions about how this looks from the other side, from the threat actor's point of view. So here I am today, exposing some of how the attack surface actually looks from the other side of barricade. So what is actually cyber attack surface to me? Well, for over the decades, the IT environments have evolved drastically. The assets in our environments are not just IPs in a network anymore. We have different types of devices, like network devices, routers, switches, firewalls. We got servers, both physical and virtual. We got endpoints in form of personal computers, mobile devices. We got applications, desktop apps, web applications, mobile applications. We got a whole bunch of cloud services that includes virtual private cloud, but also whole as-a-service solutions like software as a service or platform as a service. We got databases, we got APIs, we got credentials and identities, and these are not just usernames and passwords. These are access tokens or session cookies stored on a user's browser. And actually, those last are highly valuable recently because they allow to bypass a modern authentication mechanism like multi-factor authentication. We got mailing system, which is still a crucial communication channel with external entities in every organization. We got domains. We got physical security solutions like surveillance cameras, access control. Last but not least, we got a whole bunch of OT and IoT devices, and I bet every one of you has some sort of IoT solution in your company because, for example, if employees come with one of those like smartwatches, or you have a smart TV in your office, that's the IoT device in your office, in your environment. That's the asset in your cyber attack surface. So, looking at the diversity of that cyber attack surface, you can only imagine the hell that IT departments are through. We're trying to manage that asset inventory. The negative impact of this is the lack of visibility. You can't protect what you're not aware of. And I'm not only speaking about inability to see that some assets is in your environment. If there are assets you're using, a technology you're using, and you're not aware how it works, that is a lack of visibility, because if you don't know how it works, how can you know what threats it will be affected by? Okay, so some of you may think that I'm kind of overcomplicating that diversity of asset types because most of them are just the computers on the network. And yeah, it's true from a technical point of view. However, if you look from threats that affect those different asset types, it makes more sense. And I'm just dropping few examples here. This is just the tip of the iceberg because we don't have much time to cover the whole attack surface topic. But yeah, like web applications, they are threatened by, most custom web applications are threatened by zero-day attack types because, yeah, the developer was not aware about the vulnerability. So developer is the vendor, so this is a zero-day. And those 0 days are exploited for resource abuse, whether we want to just pivot something through a compromised web application, or maybe we want to deliver malware through a web application as a trusted origin. If the web application is processing user data, that's obviously a target for threat actors because that user data can be easily sold on the dark web. The network assets, servers, are threatened by various ranges of man-in-the-middle attack. There are central points of communication in most networks, and all the traffic comes to and from them. So this is a perfect scenario for man-in-the-middle. You know, if you don't properly secure the communication, the integrity and confidentiality of that communication, that can lead to a compromise. And the impact of this, that you may end up with a privilege escalation or a lateral movement or data leak from those devices. Applications, like legitimate applications, can be targeted by supply chain attacks. And you may have an application in your environment that you trust is secure, but it will actually be abused because you don't know how it works. It can be abused by threat actors to do some malicious stuff, and that activity actually may not be detected by your security controls because you never thought that this application can be used in a malicious way. Identities are threatened by different kinds of phishing attacks, like business email compromise or credentials hijacking, or so we can try to do a delivery of a malware, like trying somebody to click on a malicious link and download and execute a malware. Of course, there are a bunch of third-party credentials leaked on the darknet forums, on the dark web, where they can be abused. And it doesn't actually have to be credentials from one of your employees, because you may have your third-party suppliers. And I'm speaking about actual cases we have, like third-party suppliers account compromised that actually had access to a customer environment, was abused in order to try to escalate and try to compromise that customer. Luckily, it was prevented by the SOC team. Domains can be targeted for spoofing or the DNS misconfiguration. Cloud services can be threatened by misconfiguration, and it's a hell. I've been on cloud. It's like you know, keeping it secure, configuring it secure. It's a hell because there's a bunch of different configuration functions, configuration options, and if you don't know what the configurations actually does, if you didn't go through the whole documentation, you may end up setting up insecure cloud. Some cloud services are target for subdomain takeover. So, for example, you may have set up at some point in time like helpdesk.minddomain.org. You're not using it anymore, and it was pointing to, I don't know, like Zendesk, for example. It may be possible for me to register an account on the Zendesk and actually assign it with that domains of yours. Therefore, I can, again, perform some attack from that kind of trusted origin. Obviously, the dark web and the different types of data leaks, whether these are credentials that allow access directly to your environment, like VPN credentials and RDP credentials. There are stealer logs that contain some sensitive details that may allow threat actors to access your environment. Wireless networks are threatened by weak security of wireless protocols or rogue access points. Another level of complexity to properly manage that cyber attack surface is the fact that there are a variety of threat intelligence sources. We cannot only rely on like national vulnerability database and just feel that if we would just watch that single source of threat intelligence, we will be secure, because there's a lot more, like security, vendor security bulletins. Not every vendor, unfortunately, publishes to the National Vulnerability Database. There are threat intelligence information sources like CERTs, CISA, Trends Micro Zero Day Initiative, Google's open source vulnerability database. There are exploit databases which are like publicly available, but there are also exploit sources coming from a dark web, from a hacker forums, when you can buy an exploit for a specific technology. There are bug bounty programs. There are blogs from security researchers, social media, Telegram channels. Everything is a source for a threat intelligence, and you actually got to watch all of them to get a proper threat intelligence and identify the threats that may affect your assets in your cyber attack surface. Another level of complexity is added by the fact that different assets type have to be discovered and managed by different tools and different techniques. And for example, a network scanner is good in detecting network-based services and network devices. However, host-based agents tools, like for example, Tenable, Tanium, or Tenable also, can perform in better detection of security issues on a host they're installed. However, you won't be able to install Tenable or Tanium agent on a Cisco router, right? where I think, like, for example, Nessus for me is one of the best vulnerability scanning tools, and although it has a web application scanning capabilities, it is nothing compared to burp suite and a skilled penetration tester. So yeah, that adds another level of complexity, and I bet that everybody that works in cybersecurity will agree with me. There is not a single tool that will help you to protect your environment, because different tools perform good in their areas of interest. And I'm just dropping off a couple of brands here. Again, this is just a tip of the iceberg, but if you're using just a single tools out of those, you probably will fail in properly securing your cyber attack surface. You gotta use the synergy of those tools. Okay, so that was what it is, a cyber attack surface for me. I'll now tell you how the process goes from a hacker's perspective, how we identify, how we go through that cyber attack surface. And again, this is just a part of the process. We don't have enough time to cover that all, but I hope that the knowledge that I share with you today will help you to better understand your cyber surfaces. Okay, so let's say we have an organization name. Most organizations are using single core domain. Sometimes there are a couple of domains. If, for example, an organization owns a couple of brands, but typically there's a one core domain. So having that core domain, what we're trying to do is we're doing what's called horizontal domain discovery. So we're trying to find any other domains that may be owned by the organization. And we're doing that searching web history, whois history databases, DNS configuration. When we have a list of top domains, we're searching for subdomains that are set up on those domains. And again, doing a lot of research, also doing a brute forcing through a list of common words used for subdomain names. When we have a list of all the subdomains and domains, we're trying to identify some technology stack that's available on those domains, whether there are any web applications running, or are there any cloud services connected to those domains. Like, for example, if I can see your domain has a record saying MS/some number, you probably are using Office 365. If your domains are pointing to EC2 AWS instances, you get an account on AWS. There is a whole bunch of rules. I'm able to identify a lot of services that you have set up on your domains, like Atlassian, Adobe, Dropbox, name it. We're able to identify it. Okay, so I got some information about technology and cloud services you may be using. I'm doing some discovery for emails. Obviously, what I wanted to try is to identify which is the domain you're using for email communication. I'm trying to get a list of email addresses on that domain, so these are potential targets for phishing attacks. I'm checking the security of your mail server's configuration, whether I can abuse it some way in order to make that phishing attack a bit easier. Obviously, for a phishing attack, I'm searching for different similar-looking domains, whether this is a typo squatting, so I'm just looking for domains with changed letters, or even better, if there are expired domains that look similar for the domains that I'm targeting, because, you know, if I register a new typo squatted domain and I run a campaign 3 days later, a lot of anti-phishing and anti-spamming system will treat it as a suspicious because it's a fresh domain. But if I find an expired domain that was registered like 10 years ago, yeah, it probably already has a reputation built in on the internet, so it will not be recognized as malicious. And there is also a high chance that that domain was actually owned by your organization at some point in time. You just simply didn't renew it. So yeah, it's even better for me as a hacker. What else? So we're doing a dark web leak research on the dark web leaks for third-party credentials leaked on a domain from a third-party sites. We're trying to get a number of credentials from this, and we're getting a pretty good list of potential credentials because people tend to reuse password. We will be trying each of those credentials on every services that you expose on the internet that allows authentication. And if we have a list of potential usernames, we actually can do a password enumeration to a password dictionary on every account, because, for example, the fact that JD at organization.com password is not working for a JD account anymore, that might have been a password set up by the IT department for a new account, and the password will work for someone else in your organization. We're doing discovery on external networks, so trying to find the IP addresses that domains are pointing to. We're trying to identify what network services are exposed on the internet, preferably if those are network services that allow some sort of getting behind the perimeters, like VPNs, RDPs, maybe some databases. I've seen a lot of improper services exposed on the internet that actually the organization was not aware of. And the web applications, of course, everybody has some sort of web applications, so we're trying to enumerate those web applications. We're searching for known vulnerabilities, whether you're using a common web app, like, for example, WordPress, or maybe if you're using a custom web application, we can try low-profile vulnerability discovery for that web application. And of course, if it allows to any sort of authentication, we will be trying to use those credentials gathered from a third-party leaks. Okay, so a bit of live example. Unfortunately, the screen is a bit small, so you don't see everything, but I will go through. So I wanted to have some live example, and I chosen the conference domain to show you how that process looks in a real life. I hope nobody will hold it against me. I'm not exposing anything sensitive here. This is a publicly available information, actually. So yeah, we're starting from cybermanchester.events.com domain. We're doing horizontal discovery, so I'm trying to find any other domains associated with the conference organizers. So yeah, looking at who is history, I'm seeing that Tim Holmes owns 24 domains other than Cyber Manchester. So these are 24 more assets on your cyber attack surface. Also, Tim, if you're us, sorry, but you can see a thing here, or you cannot see because it's too small, but we currently have GDPR and privacy protection, so currently companies can hide all the information about domain ownership. But that wasn't true in 2017. In 2017, Tim had an email address on a Whois record, so Tim, that address would be actually on my target list. For example, if I create a phishing campaign, trying to pretend to be your registrant and asking you to log in to spoof the domain registration page. And if I manage to do this, all those domains are mine. So just for the further case, I just only choose 2 domains from the list of 24 because those 2 domains are probably only those 2 domains are related to the conference page, to the conference. They start up with cyber something. Another source of discovery, I'm using certificate transparency. So at some point in time in 2020, cybermanchesterevents.com was cybermanchester.events were had a certificate created with a bunch of other domains, beginning with cyber something. So we had like cyber Birmingham, cyber Europe, cyber Israeli, cyber London, cyber Scotland, and so on. I'm also going to the conference website. I see cybernewsgroup.co UK. So in the end, I have like 6 top domains related to that organization. I'm going to the next step. So I do subdomains discovery using different tools and different techniques, brute forcing that DNS records with a list of over 400,000 common words used for subdomain names. In total, I get a list of around 20-something targets for my assessment. These are the assets on your cyber attack surface. Also, I already using specific tools, I already have a list of IP addresses associated with those domains. Okay, so what are the web applications web applications hosted on those domains? So I get another tool. I'm doing some screenshot. I'm doing basic technology stack fingerprinting. I may do crawling in order to identify what the application is used for and what its functionality. I may do some content discovery, for example, trying to search for some backups or maybe some source code exposed. And at the end of the day, if I don't find any other way to get inside that organization, I may do some vulnerability research. Again, it's set low profile, so I won't get detected, but my experience is that a lot of organizations don't treat their web applications as a source of threat, so they don't monitor any suspicious activity on those sites. Okay, so I got some screenshots from those domains and subdomains related to the conference page. So I got 3 different web applications about conferences. I got some unset up Azure web server, and I got 2 mail login forms. So yeah, these are definitely targets for leaked credentials. Okay, so I'm going through an email discovery, and a bit of clarification here, because the conference domain is actually not good for that example. I've chosen another example, and by a coincidence, it's a no before. I hope you won't feel bad about this. I just choose the first company that popped up on my LinkedIn page. And I'm not exposing any sensitive here again. It's just an example to show you how the process of discovering that attack surface goes. So, now before, there are sources on the internet that may allow me to discover the email patterns. So now before is using first name and first letter of last name at knowbefore.com. I go to LinkedIn page, to the People's tab, and I see, 1,841 members associated. Now, I can easily, using that pattern, I can create a list of email addresses that may be on my target. Obviously, I am aware that not all those people are actual employees of KnowBefore, and there are actually email addresses with their names, but I can get a pretty big list of potential targets. And a side note is also that people tend to show their position and where they're from, so I can actually get a targeted list with like specific department or geolocations of people. So, you know, I can create a campaign that will be sent to marketing department, because probably they are less aware than the engineers, so the engineers won't see that campaign and won't raise alerts. When looking at some dark web leaks, I can see there are 138 results leaked from a KnowBefore domain. And again, clarification here, that doesn't mean that there are 138 credentials leaked for KnowBefore on a third-party site. There are leaked data. Some of those are just like, you know, information like phone numbers, maybe addresses. Some of those actually may be passwords. And if somebody is reusing those passwords, we can try to target that. And just a screenshot from one of the hackers forums showing you how easily it is to access the data. There are just a bunch of databases available actually on the public internet if you know where to search for. There is more on the dark web. We're not only seeking for leaked credentials for a third-party site. There may be some direct access sold on the dark web. Like it's just an example from a previous month. An Irish shop that's processing 400 orders per month. Access details are sold on the dark web, and it actually doesn't expose which shop what shop it is. So we have to get in contact with this supplier, with this vendor, and try to verify if this may be one of our customers or one of our targets. And yeah, just a statistic here. So 768 incidents in the last 7 days. There may be one among those incidents that has some sensitive information about your environment, about your attack surface. Okay, so I'm moving forward to email and the phishing assessment. So as said, I'm searching for domains. So I'm trying to do typo-squatted domains. I'm looking at registrants, which actually suggest me the available domains that I can register that are similar looking to the one that I'm targeting. And again, as said, expired domains are even better target. And you can imagine that in an organization that employs over 1,000 people, is everyone aware that knowbeforehr.com is not actually a legitimate domain of the organization? Maybe the HR department has just recently set up a platform for employees management where there will be some day offs and sick days management, and you just receive an email asking you to authenticate with your domain credentials there. That's just an idea for phishing. Okay, moving back to cyber conference assets. So we got a list of those IP addresses. Some of those are on a Cloudflare. I'm not interested on those because everyone is on Cloudflare, so it's a too big attack surface. However, some of those are pointing to a dedicated host and using passive discovery. So I'm not actually touching anything on the target side. I can identify open ports and network services. So I get a list of some technology running on those assets, like there's a postfix server, Nginx for web server, IBM's Big IP, whatever, pure FTPD, OpenSSH version 7.4. Actually, there's a vulnerability for that OpenSSH version. That's an asset of the conference organizers. What else I can do? So I'm searching for DNS misconfiguration. So I saw that the domain used for communication is cybernewsgroup.co UK. I'm looking at the DNS details. There is a SPF records. It's Senders Policy Framework is a solution to that is designed to prevent every host on the internet to send emails on behalf of that domain. So only the IP addresses in that DNS records are allowed to send mails from the domain. Okay, so it says minus all. It's a good policy because it is a hard fail for everyone else trying to send emails on behalf of cybernewsgroup.co.uk. But when I look at the IP ranges, I see it's a full C-class range. So it's a 255 computers that are allowed to send emails on behalf of that domains. Maybe, just maybe, I'm able to buy an email account for £1 per month on that email service provider and get an IP address for sending emails that is in that trusted IP list and actually send emails that will not just look similar to cybernewsgroup.co.uk. It will actually be from the cybernewsgroup.co.uk. I didn't went that step further, but I can tell you that we have assessments where we managed to actually do that, and that's the perfect way to deliver phishing. Some statistics. So a typical mid-sized organization can hold 15 to 100 main domains, 50 to 500 subdomains, 10 to 50 web applications, 5 to 100 external IP addresses. For every 15 IP addresses, we get around 35 different vendor product technology stacks. There are cloud services not mentioned here also, so a whole bunch of assets. So think how many you have in your organization. Okay, so we got some more time, so I will show you some examples from our assessment where we managed to abuse that information and exploit that. This is around the lack of visibility, lack of understanding your cyber attack surface. One time we were doing an assessment for a software development house. We were asked to test only web application, but with every assessment, we're trying to go as far as we can to show the customers what's the actually security implications of somebody compromising their assets. So the web application was hosted on a hosting from that software development company, and there was a proper trust boundary that didn't allow us to either directly compromise the hosting environment or compromise the hosting environment through a web application. However, we were able to identify, and compromise the development environment for that hosting company because there was no trust boundary between the web application and the development environment. And later it showed that there is no trust boundary between the development environment and the hosting environment. So in the end, we managed to compromise every customer application on that hosting that the software house was holding there. So yeah, I bet that nobody of their customers were actually aware that through some security issues in some application on that same host, their environment, their application, their asset could have been compromised. Our research showed here about, again here, about not knowing what the tools that we are using in our environment are capable of. So Splunk, everyone, probably most of you know what Splunk is a SIEM software for security. And a word of disclaimer here, this is not a security vulnerability or a bug or an exploit with a Splunk. This could be any other software. It's just a feature. It's just a functionality of that tool. So basically, Splunk agent that's installed on an environment on every computer where Splunk is implemented allows to execute PowerShell scripts. So actually, some security researchers managed to build a command and control platform on Splunk. So a lot of you heard about Cobalt Strike, it's most abused tool for command and control, seeing in an adversary arsenal. Yeah, and it's fairly good recognized by antivirus. Splunk, on the other hand, probably won't be treated as a threat source. And actually, another example from our own assessment, we've managed to abuse Sentinel-1 to do some malicious activity. So we were doing some penetration assessment on an environment which had Sentinel-1 implemented. And one of the typical techniques that we're trying to do on internal network tests is trying to dump memory, which contains password credentials on computers. And also famous tool that you may have heard of, Mimikatz, is used for that. It is recognized by every EDR and antivirus software. There are some legitimate Windows tools that can be used, which is like a NetStep. For example, ProdsDump is a legitimate tool on a Windows host. But Sentinel-1 also blocked that one because it knew that technique. It actually showed up that Sentinel-1 agent is able to do a memory dump for its purpose. So having local administrator privileges on a compromised tools, we kindly asked Sentinel-1 to do a memory dump and give us password of every users on that computer. It's a feature, not a bug. Okay, so yeah, it's a bit scary. Everything can be hacked, but there are things that you can do to defend yourself. And I'm just dropping some guides here, how to follow that. So KISS principle. For those of you who don't know, KISS is a design pattern, very old design pattern, but it's a very, very valid in the cybersecurity. It says, keep it simple, stupid. So don't overcomplicate your environments. Disable everything that is not used. Remove unused accounts. Make it narrow the attack surface as much as you can. Use multiple layers of security. Like, don't rely on the fact that you're having the best EDR on the market, because as you saw, that EDR can be abused. If you will have multiple layers of security, the actual, I didn't mention that, but the problem with that Sentinel-1 example was that we were able to get local administrator access in the first place, and that was because of password reuse, very typical problem. That was the problem. If the organization had a security to prevent password reuse, there are solutions provided by Microsoft that can help you to mitigate that risk. So they will have multiple layers of security. They wouldn't be compromised. Use MITRE attack and defend frameworks. Seriously, guys, I think that in most of our penetration testing reports, we're instead of like creating customized remediation action items, we're simply referring to MITRE mitigations and detection, because this everything you need to know and everything you need to do in order to defend and protect your environment is actually there and is written step by step. Implement principle of least privileges. Don't allow users or software or services to do anything more that they should be allowed to do. Use whitelist. So whitelist the actions that somebody should be allowed to do and blacklist everything else. And obviously manage your asset inventory, because as you see, if there's something that you're not know about, some legacy systems that may be used for compromise of your environment. You got to change your mindset. You got to assume that you will be breached at some point of time. And taking that into account, do you have a proper plan? So are you doing some simulations, you can do penetration tests, you can do simulations of attack, you can do even a simple, because I know like red teaming and attack simulations are fairly expensive assessment, but you can do a tabletop exercise. Imagine that just today you're entering your company and every computer has a ransomware note on it. What would you do? Do you have an incident response plan? Do you have a list of action items that you can take in order to react on that incident? You do. Okay, that was on that shared storage in the IT department folder. Good, that's encrypted right now, so print it, have it somewhere offline under your hands. And that's all, thank you.